We talk a lot about racial inequality in America. But what if the data is telling a story that we've been missing? A story that's not just about race, but about a specific, hidden crisis facing Black men. Today, we're going to follow the numbers and see where they lead.
So let's start with just one number, 16%. It's a big one. On a single day back in 2010, 16% of the boys from one low-income Baltimore neighborhood were in prison. I mean, think about that. That's not how many had ever been to prison. That's how many were literally behind bars on one single day.
But inside that number, there's the story of a young man named Dwight. He's from that exact same neighborhood, but he got out. He became this successful, upwardly mobile guy. The thing is, his story isn't the norm. It's a total statistical anomaly. And to really get this crisis, we have to figure out why his success is the exception, not the rule. To do that, we've got to look at the numbers behind Dwight's childhood neighborhood, Rosemont and West Baltimore. This is where we get to see what that rule he managed to escape actually looks like on the ground. Okay, so for the kids Dwight grew up with, the reality is just, wow, it's harsh. We already know that 1 in 7 were locked up on any given day. But get this, by the time they hit their mid-30s, only 11% of them were married. Let that sink in for a second. More boys from this one neighborhood ended up as prisoners than as husbands, and a third of them were still stuck in Rosemont as adults, probably raising their own kids in that same exact cycle.
And that cycle? It often kicks off right here, at the local school, Belmont Elementary. In 2019, just 1% of its students met the state's math standards. 1%. Now look at a school in a wealthy area, just a few miles away, where 82% of the kids cleared that bar. I mean, how can you even wrap your head around that gap? The source material calls this failure almost incomprehensible. And yeah, they're not wrong.
So what is going on here? Why is success so rare? Well, some groundbreaking research from the economist Raj Chetty and his team, they looked at 20 million Americans. They found an answer that kind of changes everything. It's not just about race, it's about gender.
And this gets us to the really big question they asked. For Black Americans who grow up poor, do men and women have the same shot at climbing that economic ladder?
And the answer is, well, it's pretty shocking. The data shows that Black women who are raised in poverty actually have rates of upward mobility that are really similar to white women. But for men, it is a completely different story. There's this huge gap. Black men are way, way less likely to climb out of poverty than white men are. This is so important, I'm just going to read you the direct quote from the study. It says, "The Black-white mobility gap is entirely driven by differences in men's, not women's, outcomes." This is huge. It basically means the entire gap that we talk so much about is a Black male story. Okay, so where does this split happen? How does this gendered gap even develop? Well, to really get it, you've got to look at these two massive pipelines that shape so many young lives, the school system and the justice system. And this isn't something that just happens after high school. It starts way, way earlier. As researchers from the Teachers College Record found, from the first day of elementary school all the way through college, Black males are lagging behind not just white males, but Black females too. And when you get to the end of that educational pipeline, the results are pretty stark. 67%, 2/3, of all college degrees awarded to Black students go to women. Let me put it another way for you. For every single Black man who gets a college degree, 2 Black women do. 2 to 1. All right, so what happens next? What happens when these young men hit the job market, often with fewer degrees and facing all these other roadblocks? Well, let's look at the economic fallout. It's really a perfect storm of disadvantages. They have fewer educational credentials, they face a greater risk of discrimination, and they have higher rates of incarceration. And all of this leads to a finding from Chetty's research that is just mind-blowing. Get this, Black men who were raised in rich families still have lower employment rates than white men who were raised in poor families. Okay, let's zoom out and look at wages over the last 40 years or so. It tells a really powerful story. Back in 1979, the typical Black man working full-time made about $757 a week in today's money. And at the time, that was actually more than the typical white woman, who made about $686. Okay, now let's fast forward 40 years. What happened? Well, wages for white women shot up, way past $1,000 a week. And for Black men, almost nothing. They've barely budged. So after 4 decades, they went from earning more than white women to earning about 14% less. So let's just be clear about what that means. After you account for inflation, over 40 years, the real weekly wages for Black men have only gone up by 10%. That is basically a whole generation of going nowhere financially. So, when you start to connect all these dots, from the neighborhood to the classroom to the paycheck, it stops looking like a bunch of separate problems. It starts to look like one single massive crisis, what one analyst called an appalling crisis, that really requires a massive response.
And really, the big takeaway here, like the New York Times pointed out, is that this isn't just a story about race. There is something truly unique about the hurdles that Black men and boys are facing. The obstacles are distinct, and they're facing them because of their gender, not in spite of it. Now, people are starting to recognize this. Back in 2014, for instance, President Obama launched the My Brother's Keeper initiative to focus specifically on this. And you see more foundations doing the same today. But for a lot of people, it just doesn't feel like enough, The problem is so big that some are calling for nothing less than a new deal for Black men. So, that's where we are. The data is crystal clear. The problem is specific, and it runs deep, which leaves us with the biggest question of all. What is it really going to take to tear down these unique obstacles and change the outcome for the next generation of boys like Dwight?